Welcome to today's presentation, everyone. I'm Dr. Tracy Thomas, and as you can see, the title of today's presentation is Mastering Addiction Recovery: 6 Shifts to Removing Addiction from Your Life. And it's great to have you all here, and I'm really excited to share all the great content I have for you on how to remove addiction from your life, which I know is the most important thing to you and the real reason you're here with me today. So I just want to dive right in because I want you to get everything you can out of our time today, and I've got a lot of content for you. So let's dive right in, and let's start by talking about who this webinar is for. So this webinar is for anyone who is struggling with addiction or struggling as a result of someone else's addiction. And this could be an addiction to alcohol or drugs or food, relationships, gambling, sex, or anything else. And this is for people who haven't achieved success using other recovery systems or achieved success supporting someone they love with other recovery systems or methods. This is for those that want to remove addiction from their life or effectively support someone else to remove addiction from their life, which is also a way, of course, that you remove it from your life as well. And this is for anyone that wants to move beyond the suffering of life with addiction so they can live their fullest potential every day. So if you've struggled with addiction or with attempting to recover from addiction, or maybe you've never been told that full recovery is actually possible, then this is for you. And whether it's you or someone you love that's struggling, I want you to pay very close attention because this is going to be the best 60 minutes you've ever spent working on addiction recovery. In the next 60 minutes, I'm going to show you how to reclaim your life and drop the whole I'm an addict baggage for life and get out of a lifetime of recovery work, even if your addiction is very serious and long-standing. And if you're a family member, you too can drop the shame of ever having to talk about someone you love having relapsed again or being back in rehab, or how you don't even talk to them anymore because they're a lost cause. We're going to look at the real reasons why addiction recovery processes rarely work and why these recovery rates are so low, but why real recovery can finally work for you or for someone you love. We're going to learn why admitting to addiction and doing something about it doesn't have to be so scary and so daunting anymore. And I'm going to show you how to approach any addiction so you can fully recover and begin to live your full potential, no matter how bad things have been and no matter how long your struggles have been going on. And I'm also going to discuss the critical evaluations necessary for achieving a full recovery from the causes of addiction that no one ever told you about and that are almost never looked at in most rehabs and by most recovery providers or used in most recovery processes. And the hidden obstacles responsible for the relapse roller coaster and the rehab revolving door. We're also going to look at how to avoid the insanity of recovery tactics that you don't want to do anyway, and they can actually make addiction worse in some cases. We're going to check out a powerful mechanism that can eradicate addiction for good, regardless of what treatment approaches have never worked. And I'm going to talk to you about what to do to support someone you love or support yourself, and if it's supporting yourself or someone you love, how to do it effectively without straining yourself any further or enabling someone with the wrong support. And I know there's all this fear about what to do and what not to do in helping people with addiction, and it can feel like nothing you do works and none of your choices feel right or yield the outcome you want. And I'm going to help straighten all of that out for you. And Also, we're going to look at how to relapse-proof recovery so that you can remove addiction from your life quickly, conveniently, and completely. And an essential component that's missing from most addiction recovery strategies that is costing you more than you realize. We're also going to discuss how families can conquer addiction together without having to go to family therapy or 12-step meetings. And ultimately, my promise to you today is a life-changing set of shifts and strategies to remove addiction from your life completely. And now I know that might seem like a crazy concept to you right now, but it's an absolute reality for our clients and their families who have done it. And I'm going to show you the exact processes they're using to make that happen. But before we move forward, I just want to take a second and check in with you. And let's look at whether or not this sounds like you. So does this sound like you or someone you love? Are you tired of struggling with addiction, with relapse and failed recovery attempts, and wondering if things will ever get better? Are you afraid to admit to addiction or that someone in your family's addicted? Because the thought of attempting recovery and anything to do with dealing with addiction just seems painful, scary, and complex. Do you secretly want to scream for being saddled with addiction and the job of recovery forever, and just wish life could be more normal? Are you turned off by traditional treatment options and support options, things like rehabs, meetings and sponsors and psychiatrists and medications and 12 steps and just want to avoid them because they don't provide you with what you really need? Have the recovery methods you've tried failed to provide long-term addiction recovery success, leaving you afraid to lose everything that matters to you? Are you apathetic because addiction is still holding your happiness hostage, even though you've tried everything? Are you frustrated that the reward for recovery is nothing more than never-ending work on recovery, and you'd rather just move forward with the rest of your life? Has addiction hijacked your life and taken its toll on many things, including your bank account, while things are just getting worse? And are you left wondering how much more addiction can take from you and how much more you can take of it? Do you want to remove everything to do with addiction from your life so you and your family can be free again? And finally, do you feel locked in the painful prison of addiction and overwhelmed by the confusion of costly, unproductive, unsuccessful, unattractive addiction recovery methods without alternatives and no hope in sight? And like, if you don't make the right decision, then everything in your life or the life of someone you love is at risk. If any of this sounds like you, then I have good news. None of those things are the real problem. Those are just symptoms of the real problem. The real problem is that you haven't made what I call the shifts. And we're going to talk about what those are in just a second. But for right now, just know this. Once you make them, you'll take your life and your identity back from addiction. No more calling yourself names like addict or alcoholic. No more feeling like you have a burden or are a burden because this thing is hanging over your head. Instead, you'll reclaim the rest of your life for fulfilling your potential and start accomplishing the real priorities in your life. You'll know your unique set of addiction-causing factors and how to manage their warning signs so you can stop relapse before it rears its head. and you'll have mastery over your negative emotions, anxieties, depression, reactivity, and self sabotaging, dysfunctional, and unproductive behaviors. Your relationships will be repaired, restored, and better than ever, and you'll return to relationships with those that matter to you the most and have the capacity to create strong connections and fulfilling relationships easily. You'll be the healthiest, happiest, most productive, and prosperous version of yourself, and you'll never go backwards again. You'll relapse proof your recovery, regain your dignity, and live confidently, knowing and feeling that you're always safe and secure. And the biggest problem that you'll have is getting used to being problem free for the rest of your life. But like I tell all of my clients, don't worry, you'll get used to it. So for now, folks, there's one thing you need to know. And that is that there are 6 simple shifts you need to make to master addiction recovery, remove addiction from your life, and start living your full potential. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how to make those shifts today. But before we go too much further, let me just take a moment and introduce myself so that you know who I am and why the hell you should listen to me. So I'm Dr. Tracy Thomas, but people call me Dr. T, and you can feel free to do the same. I'm a licensed psychologist and a certified life and recovery coach. I'm an addiction recovery strategist and interventionist and have over 20 years of expertise in maximizing human potential and performance. I'm known for taking the most complex addiction cases from all over the country and creating one miracle recovery story after another. My specialty is figuring out the unique and specific root causal factors for anyone's addiction, no matter how mysterious or challenging their addiction has been, so they too can recover completely. I have helped hundreds of clients and their families completely recover from addiction when others had written them off, and I've saved countless clients and their families from a lifetime of struggle and pain. So let me take a second and tell you how I discovered these 6 shifts. So I've had tons and tons of clients and a lot of experience in the field of recovery as a psychologist, a coach, a therapist, an interventionist, and a strategist, helping people suffering from addiction and trying to recover from both addiction and other co-occurring disorders. I've had clients come to me after years in the system of recovery, rehabs, psychiatrists, medications, sponsors and steps and everything. And I've actually seen them worse off and kind of broken from the illness of addiction, but more broken from the business of recovery and the windy road that it can be for people when they're trying to recover. I've seen families who have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and some millions of dollars over what seems like a lifetime of years trying to help their loved ones recover, only to have this condition tear their family down, fatigue them into numbness, and remain as the central character in all of their lives. I've seen clients and their families desperate and depleted of their dignity as addiction eats away at their dreams and the dreams they had for just even enjoying the simple pleasures of life. I've worked at multiple treatment centers and seen a lot of clients and colleagues cycle through the industry doing different things. And I've worked at the highest levels where the top tier recovery services in the most expensive rehabs are available. And I've seen a whole lot of what doesn't work and keeps the rehabs and the whole industry employed with repeat customers. And I've really learned what doesn't work. And because I saw so much of what doesn't work, while I personally was able to test out what I knew worked for my clients in the rehabs I worked in, I knew that I had to go out on my own years ago and give clients the process that actually works for full recovery. You see, when I worked at these top tier rehabs, my clients were the ones following my process, and they were the only ones getting well, moving on with their life and not coming back to rehab, and fully recovering in a really enjoyable way. While I saw others continually cycle back into the rehab center multiple times, only to receive the same cookie cutter treatment approach that was applied to everyone, while no one got their specific issues directly addressed in a manner that was anything more than a temporary band-aid. Because you see, these treatment centers and places, these 12-step scenarios, these situations, they just aren't set up to do what they need to do. And the treatment centers aren't set up for anything more than basic stabilization. So I knew that I had to go out on my own and give people what they really needed, because I couldn't watch that suffering anymore. Over time, I realized that the system didn't work for actual recovery, and it only treated the symptoms and was shooting for like sobriety or abstinence. So I went out on my own and I started a company that was capable of providing the right recovery formula for clients to fully recover from each of their own unique and specific addiction-causing factors. And it's been a radical success at creating real, full, and lasting recovery for people who need it. My method has proven successful for countless clients over the years, and I didn't want to keep this secret any longer from people everywhere who are being told that addiction is a life sentence when full recovery is possible with the right recovery formula. I just hated the thought that people are believing that they have no other options when it's just likely that they've never received the recovery approach they needed in the first place. When in reality, the bottom line is this: there are 6 key shifts you must make to master addiction recovery, remove addiction from your life, and start living your potential. And I'm going to walk you through all of them in this session. Number 1, you must rethink your recovery strategy. Replacing conventional and ineffective recovery strategies for ones that bring complete and lasting recovery is the core reason our clients are so successful. Statistics don't lie. Most addiction recovery strategies are flawed, and they don't work for the majority of people long term, so be willing to let them go. If the strategies haven't worked, don't assume it's you. It's likely that the services haven't done what they're supposed to do. And in fact, the statistics all say this. And there was a great article in the Washington Post that talked about how, really the title was, "We're addicted to rehab even though it doesn't work." And they talked about how, despite America's addiction to rehab, it still doesn't work for the majority of people, and it's failing people with what they really need. And also, when the person relapses, they don't step up and say, "Let me do it better," or "Let's have a better system or a better process for this person." They blame the person. And so, for decades, Americans have clung to this near religious conviction that rehab and the 12-step model, which is basically what's in every rehab, that this offers effective treatment, when I'm sure if you're on this webinar, you know that it doesn't. And the reality is we have hundreds of millions of people suffering from addiction. And if it was working, we would not have so many people not only suffering from so many kinds of addictions, but people, ODing, people killing themselves, and families being torn apart and never being able to come back together and, remaining fractured. If this thing worked, if AA or the 12-step model that is used in these rehabs and the approach in these rehabs, which is just a bit more of what they do in 12-step work. If this worked, we wouldn't have people like Lindsay Lohan cycling back in and out of rehab and then going to jail because it didn't work for her when she could afford the best. We wouldn't be losing people like Heath Ledger and Philip Seymour Hoffman and Robin Williams, who did a lifetime of rehabs and a lifetime of 12-step meetings. The reality is that the statistics show that it doesn't work for about 95% of the people, and only 5% of the people are able to remain abstinent, which doesn't mean that they're recovered and living their full potential. These numbers do not lie. And in that Washington Post article, they said these therapies that are offered by most treatment centers are completely divorced from the state-of-the-art medical clinical knowledge, and we might even just dismiss them as quaint if it weren't for the fact that addiction is a deadly and devastating disease that affects families at their core. And the reality here is that relapse does not mean that there's something wrong with a person. It means that the right treatment has not been applied, and that whatever they were getting has failed, and it just indicates that they need something more. So stop blaming yourself or your loved one. Look at these real world results, because how could it be your fault or your loved one's fault that's struggling when so many people suffer? And just use your rationale, because we don't want to keep going to the dry well here that doesn't work. And full remission is possible. This is a clinical condition. So don't give up on them because the system of recovery and addiction recovery is broken. Be willing to try something different and seek a full recovery, and accept nothing less than a removal of addiction from your life. I'm hoping this makes sense, folks. Does this make sense? We've got to have you be honest about your recovery results and your return on investment for all you've invested so far, because there's a lot at stake. And you got to look at how this thing is working for you or your loved one, and stop playing around with half measures. Addiction is not going away, and it impacts everything, right? That's exactly the reality that you have to have in mind when you rethink your recovery strategy. Because choosing the right recovery strategy is really a choice between a life of pain and a life of potential for you, or if you're watching this, to help a loved one, for your loved one, and for your whole family. Whatever methods have been used before that you've tried, if they haven't helped free you from addiction, do not give up, and instead, let's redefine your addiction philosophy. In shift number 2, we're going to redefine your addiction philosophy, because addressing the unique biophysiological and psychosocial stress factors that lead to survival-based behaviors is key. Each person has a set of these. They have things within them from the time they were born, their own biophysiological factors within them that make them, when they interact with the environment, be it people or toxins or allergies or scenarios or situations or things that don't work for their own biophysiology, they're not compatible for them. Things that might be less functional in their body than someone else's. These things cause stress factors, and it's not just the kind of stress where you go, that person's like stressing out or freaking out or overwhelmed like with intensity. It's not just that. It's a chronic stress that's going on in them that probably from the time they were little, they were reaching for coping mechanisms that are adaptive, because being in a stressful, painful internal experience is not intuitive, and we adapt by having ways to cope and self-medicate. These are survival-based because we have to have them to get out of pain and get through the moment. So with each person having these, you gotta see addiction of any kind as an adaptation that's helping them in the moment, but it's hurting them long term. Because the only reason they have to use it long term is because they're not getting these issues addressed directly, which are their addiction causing factors. And we have to do that in our addiction philosophy. We have to see it this way, folks. Does this make sense to you? If we see it this way, then we can actually address what's really wrong and causing the person to be in such intense pain that they will override any logic or rationale or consequences, because that pain must be alleviated and something in them overrides everything else. And then they're left to suffer. Addiction is a biological based condition that can be cured, but most approaches only focus on these behaviors, the psychology, and somebody's character. And that's just not enough. They're band-aids. It's like telling someone to do a behavior. And let's all think about it. How many times have any of us said, we're going to do a behavior because it's going to help us make our life better? Or we're not going to do a behavior because we want to change something? And how many times has that been overridden by something else in you? Well, that something else wasn't because you were not strong-willed or intentional or even strategic. It's because something else in your biological condition and how it interacts with your environment is too stress-based within you, and that has caused those behaviors that you want to stop. And when you try to stop them, the stress that you're under gets primary focus, and it overrides everything else, and it kicks the ass of any behavioral intention you will ever have. It will be very difficult to make those changes, to stop doing something or start doing something, when these biological issues that could be a variety of 100 different things for a person don't get looked at. Instead, we're sending people to meetings to say, I'm a bad person with bad character and I'm powerless and I can't be trusted. Or we're just sending them to talk therapy to talk about some feelings and maybe have some strategies around that and some empathy. But that cannot fix a biological based condition that needs to be treated like any other condition that is chronically stress based. So all of that stuff is helpful, but it is not enough in your addiction philosophy and how you approach things. So those things are fine, but the addiction approach has to be through the chronic stress lens and treating those factors in a person. That's how you change things. Because addiction is not hereditary. There's no gene for addiction. There's no chromosome that says you have addiction and your dad had it, so you're going to have it. The factors, the biological based factors that are connected to your genetics and all kinds of things that are going on in your being, those are the things that are hereditary, and they are passed down multigenerationally, genetically, which predisposes people with those biophysiological based factors that make it difficult for them to deal with certain things in certain ways and in their environment. That is the hereditary pattern, but that can be changed by changing the pattern of what's causing the stress and focusing on that as the illness. Full recovery is possible if all of these factors are addressed. Does that make sense, everybody? Can you see this differently now? Can you have a different philosophy toward this? This is a game changer when you see things this way. Make sense? Okay. Now, full recovery from these pain and this stress factors, this creates full recovery from those addictive compulsions. And full recovery of one's health and their full functioning at the highest aptitude should be the standard of care for any process and measuring its success. It should be what we're going for. It should be the standard of what somebody should expect. Not just to get abstinent, not to stop doing something, but the standard is to be their highest self. The focus has got to be on the total person for total remission and all kinds of things about them, which I can talk about at some other point with you. The reward of abstinence also just isn't reward enough. I've worked with hundreds of people and they are not motivated enough by just being abstinent from a behavior, even though they'll feel better and they might stop ruining things in their life. They they're not that excited about it, like sobriety or just abstinence from some process that they're doing that's addictive. It isn't reward enough for them. Full recovery of their potential must be their motivation. That's what excites people. That's what they're willing to do the work for. They're willing to deal with these chronic stress factors that have to be uncovered and work through them to get their life and potential back. Any other reward just doesn't make sense for them. It's just not a strong enough motivator. So the proof is in the pudding, folks. Our client Mandy was desperate after years of rehabs for multiple addictions, disorders, and health issues. She actually needed sober companions to keep her safe 24/7. And she was literally a prisoner of this addiction and like having these babysitters to keep her safe from herself. She was devastated, hopeless. She was embarrassed, shamed, and things were just getting worse. Many doctors had given up on her, and her family had almost given up too. And Mandy had definitely pretty much given up on herself. I mean, her family had spent over $1.2 million over years trying to help her recover. And here they were on the hook to have a lifetime of sober companions for 20 grand a month. This was impossible. And a lot of the doctors in the area that had tried to help her were kind of, they kind of went by the wayside. It was sort of known in the area that this person really was a lost cause, and these doctors had pretty much given up, and they were feeling like she should be institutionalized. So somebody recommended that Mandy come to me, and I knew that if we did our process that things would turn around. Mandy was skeptical because she had been through hell with the recovery industry and had a lot of harm caused to her by all of these processes. She was on like 9 medications, and her whole life consisted of dealing with this addiction and trying to recover and getting nowhere and feeling worse. We replaced that faulty recovery strategy with our formula. We adjusted her addiction recovery philosophy so things could be different in how she approached everything. And we addressed all of her biophysiological and psychosocial stress factors while putting the right reward system in place, her life and her potential. That's what she wanted back. And in less than 3 months, she was stable, energized, happy, focused, and free. She's never gone back to rehab after having gone 9 times for both substances and eating disorders. She doesn't have all these cravings anymore. She doesn't have to go to a bunch of meetings, and she doesn't have any more of the 11 or 12 health issues that she was plagued by. No more bipolar, no more ADHD, no more arthritis or eating disorder. And she considers herself recovered and looks like a supermodel. And the funny thing about this is that within a few months, that's what Mandy was calling it. She called this our supermodel program, which I thought was adorable. But the bottom line is that's how she felt. And she did look like a completely different person because we did this different approach, strategy, and philosophy. She and her family literally credit us with saving her life. And that feels amazing. Let's move on to shift number 3, which is get essential evaluations. So there are numerous health evaluations that must be done to determine all of the causal factors to the addiction. Most of these tests and assessments are never done, and cookie-cutter addiction treatment is applied. This leads to undertreatment, mistreatment, and recovery mostly fails for people. And I mean real recovery, not just abstinence. Clients always have at least 8 to 10 undiagnosed issues that end up that are those chronic stress factors that I'm talking about that nobody knew about, so they were never going to get better. They may have had some abstinence for a while, but they were never going to be fully well and fully recovered and able to live as their highest self doing the life that they want to do. Does that make sense, folks? If people have all these undiagnosed issues and they're not being treated and we're sending them to do these other things, we're missing exactly what's causing the addiction. So the absence of these essential evaluations creates confusion. It gives you skewed recovery data and a false sense of recovery ability and potential. This leaves loopholes in the recovery strategy, and you can't have any. This results in harm. This hurts the person, it hurts their family, and long-term damage occurs for all involved. And in some cases, loss of life, because the person's banging their head against the wall trying to do this, feeling like a loser, feeling like they're not capable. The family makes that assessment. They start to feel hopeless. Everybody's disempowered. They're fractured in their relationships, and this is what life looks like it's got to be for a person. That creates a different sense of self, and it's more pain. And in some cases, people will, of course, if it's a certain addiction, they'll OD. And that's, there's 115 people a day in this country overdosing. And in the worst case, there's loss of life, not just from losing your potential, which is something I consider a loss of life, but literally people take their life because they are in so much pain, not only from the addiction, but from the recovery process and not having it include these essential evaluations. And they're in the pain they can't get out of, and the only thing they can do is something that helps them permanently get out of pain. And that, as we discussed already, is intuitive, but it's not necessary, and it's sad and wrong that this is how things are. This whole thing just drives shame, stress, and literally more addiction activity for the person. And more intensive and destructive relapse cycles, because all of that pain, all of that feeling of inadequacy, which is a misperception, because everybody else is saying this method should work and you don't work. This shame and feeling of low capacity and inability to ever recover makes someone feel more stressed, more pain, more hopeless, more disempowered. And then, of course, when their meetings are telling them, their steps are telling them that they're powerless, this is so painful that it just creates more pain management, which looks like addiction activity, and that's greater and greater painful based relapses that become more destructive and more ingrained. Let me tell you about a client of ours, Al. Before working with us, he was addicted and hanging on by a thread. Al was super stressed. He was literally one of the most stressed 26-year-old people I've ever met, and probably one of our most stressed clients. He was severely addicted to substances, and he suffered from depression, anxiety, insomnia, explosive rage, low self-esteem, social anxiety, and painful isolation. After struggling in the real world, Al was living with his parents, and his life consisted of smoking pot constantly and playing video games. He was friendless, girlfriendless. He'd never had a relationship in his life. He was so lonely. He was jobless and directionless. This was really, really miserable. The family was in constant turmoil, and his parents felt trapped. Al felt pretty trapped too, and he was defiant and also kind of needy at the same time. And his parents were just overwhelmed and at a loss. Everything they tried with him had backfired, and they just kind of thought he was a problem child. And that's basically what Al began to believe too over the years, which also made him feel hopeless. So the parents and Al, the whole family was just stuck. After working with us, Al truly has a whole new life, because everyone was willing to follow our formula and get those essential evaluations. The family was willing, and of course, Al became willing to get assessed at the level he needed with all of the tests and evaluations that we needed to get to the bottom of what was wrong that was causing the addiction. We had an extensive series of assessments run on Al. The collective data revealed that Al had, among other things, Asperger's, ADD, PTSD, auditory processing disorder, thyroid disorder, adrenal fatigue syndrome, Lyme disease, and leaky gut syndrome. Everything about his addiction was crystal clear. All of these things had been plaguing him. Of course he would want to self-medicate. But with the appropriate tests being done, the right recovery formula was easy for us to customize to Al. And now all of Al's issues get addressed directly, and Al doesn't need to self-medicate anymore. Does that make sense, everyone? These things get addressed with these evaluations. They get treated, and they don't have the stress or pain, so they don't even think to or want to or have to fight not to self-medicate. Al is now clean, sober, he's calm, he is employed now, he just finished graduate school for engineering. The guy has a 145 IQ, so I definitely wanted to make sure that that intelligence and talent could be contributing in the world and wasn't squashed out by addiction and never brought to the world, to serve it. And Al, now he takes ballroom dance lessons because he's not socially anxious anymore, and he's flirting with all the girls. He's now finally using more of his potential in the world. And the good news is that Al's parents can rest easy knowing they didn't lose their son to addiction, because his whole life he'd been suffering from these illnesses and nobody knew it. And Al was suffering, and Al felt crazy, and he felt so much shame. But now he too has not lost his life to addiction. In fact, his whole life is ahead of him. And it's wonderful. So in summary, get essential evaluations, because essential evaluations tell you the causes of addiction and make it possible to remove addiction from your life. Al is now thriving for the first time in his life. And instead of trying to simply survive his addiction and these other undetected conditions every day, he's focused on a bright future. He's more confident, he's alive, he feels connected, and he's productive, which makes him feel really happy about himself. He feels good. He feels a sense of capacity and mastery. He likes himself now, and he can see the path before him, and it's a bright one, and he's excited about his future. And Al is making a contribution to society with his 145 IQ, and that makes him feel like a whole self, like an integrated self, not like a fractured self that has all these different parts of you that are having different experiences and not being able to be expressed. Folks, so with that, we've got to do the next shift, which is we've got to use the secret weapon, which is a comprehensive and integrative approach to addiction, because it's the most powerful way to beat it. We've got to have a comprehensive and integrative approach to addiction because it's the most powerful way to beat it. I want to make sure everybody gets that. This is a hugely important shift and why we consider it our secret weapon. It is the only method that treats the root causes of addiction, and it's the only method that really works. Trust me. Here's the old achieving addiction recovery format. Here's the traditional approach. The old way, all you need is this: 12-step meetings for the rest of your life. Admit you're just a defective person with bad character. Work steps over and over and over again. Work with a sponsor and be accountable to them, right? Because they certainly know everything about all of your clinical issues, and that makes perfect sense. Have these other addicts show you the way. Have them show you how to be your best self. Have them, work with you to treat these issues. Focus on a higher power, and in fact, nothing else will matter. You won't even have these issues. Or go to detox and rehab multiple times. It really doesn't matter. Just keep going. Just do hours of therapy for years and years to come and just talk about your feelings and let that take care of everything. And by the way, take numerous medications and work with a psychiatrist indefinitely and just keep doing more medications. And when those don't work, try others or add others and deal with all of those side effects, by the way, too. We don't even know what those do long term. The old way also includes just white knuckling it through the pain, which, as we already discussed, is really challenging to do because we have an inborn thing within us that makes us medicate pain and stop it because we're not designed to just live with it. And if you just also make your whole life about recovery and just focus on that, day in, day out, meetings all the time, maybe you'll recover from addiction. Folks, this is what I call the cross your fingers recovery approach. Does this make any sense to you? I mean, does this make any sense to you? It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I haven't seen it work. That's why I'm bringing this to you today. The new way, an efficient and comprehensive approach. No lifetime of meetings, therapists, psychiatrists, or medications. No physiological override of your willpower. No more complexity. No mysterious, incurable illness. No more doing someone else's recovery program that was never going to work for you. A comprehensive and integrative approach is the only effort needed to remove addiction from your life. Instead, do this. Get comprehensive evaluations, get data from those evaluations, address all the issues integratively, and do this until the symptoms are gone. And this gets you full recovery from addiction. Make sense, folks? Isn't that simpler and more sane? It's simpler, more powerful, and quicker at removing addiction from your life. This efficient approach addresses completely and directly the specific issues that are actually causing the addiction, and it brings about total health and recovery, including recovery from the addiction. I'm hoping that this makes sense because this is an effective process that relieves pain and suffering. It delivers the freedom of full recovery, and this is how you become relapse-proof. This targets the roots of addiction, which is a directed effort, and this gets results quickly, conveniently, and practically, which gives more immediate pain relief to you or your loved one and your whole family. This recovers your full potential, which is the only motivation that matters. This is how it works, folks. Does this make sense? Folks, the proof is in the pudding. Our client Andy before was addicted and overwhelmed, and after working with us, he was stable, sober, and what he calls unstuck. Our client Andy's family was overwhelmed with his addiction to drugs, and he had other significant mental health issues and self-destructive behaviors, and it was a real struggle for everyone. Andy was painfully suffering himself, but he had been afraid to get treatment for years. Life was not only passing Andy by, but it was passing them all by. This 29-year-old guy and his parents had all this hope for him, and they want to live their life, and they want his life to be good, and they want him to be living his potential. But what was happening is they were just stuck in this cycle of addiction. We used our comprehensive and integrative approach, We used our comprehensive and integrative approach to efficiently address the 11 health disorders we uncovered. Because you can't skip any, right? And Andy maintains sobriety to this day. So here we are again with 11 health disorders, but do we want to treat all of them just like one by one and go through all of that effort? Or can we treat them integratively and comprehensively? And the answer is yes. When you know what they all are, it's really easy to develop an integrative approach that takes care of healing all of the disorders that are uncovered, because you can't leave any untended. And that is what heals the addiction and removes it from your life. In Andy's words, he finally became unstuck for the first time in his life. And that was just music to my ears. So today, this process helps countless clients and their families work together in this model to effectively and efficiently tackle addiction recovery. By understanding the matrix of issues causing addiction and treating the issues integratively, a client and their family's whole life can turn around. Does that make sense, folks? Does that sound like it would work better than what you've tried before or what's out there? I hope so. Now let's recap what we've learned so far. So now at this point, we know that you must rethink your recovery strategy and you must redefine your addiction philosophy, get essential evaluations, and use the secret weapon to overcome addiction and fully recover. Now let's look at how your relationship with yourself makes addiction recovery possible. You must operate with integrity. This is shift number 5. And my definition of integrity is actioning your awareness. Whether you're struggling with addiction or with somebody else's addiction, integrity is a crucial component to full recovery for everyone involved. Stop lying to yourself about the suffering and about what is at stake here, and focus on beating this condition like you would if it was cancer. Have the integrity to do whatever it takes. Yourself and your loved one is depending on it. Don't leave yourself or your loved one hanging here. This is a serious condition, and it's gotta be treated as if your loved one or you had any other chronic health condition. There are simply issues that just haven't been dealt with properly yet, so start fresh and work together. Integrity in doing this is required for becoming relapse proof, and it is possible. But you have to face up to these issues, and no longer do you need to be afraid of addiction or attempting recovery as the client or the family, because there's an easier way, and I'm talking to you about that today. So you can stop avoiding this and get in integrity with yourself and what this is all costing you and your family and what it will cost you if it goes on, because it is costing you. And I know you're here today because you do have integrity and you do want your life to be in integrity, and you want it to be full of potential, and you want that for your whole family and anyone that you know that's suffering from this insidious condition that can be cured. Now let's look at the last shift, which is invest in mentoring. Shift number 6 is invest in mentoring, and everyone should have a mentor. Mentoring brings 3 things: new strategies, accountability, and leadership. There are new strategies in your head right now that would not have been there if you didn't make the time for this webinar. A good mentor will give you great strategies and make sure you act on them, and they'll lead you to achieve your outcomes. A great mentor will also put together a powerful group of people all working together towards similar goals, and this multiplies everyone's effectiveness exponentially. In our programs, we have people just starting out in recovery, learning right alongside people in later stages of recovery, supporting each other every day, and we have family members doing the same. Everyone wins, because people in recovery need a guide to help them create a life architecture that works for them. They need containment in a process that is geared toward their unique needs and essentially helps with what I call repatterning them into their healthiest, highest self so that they can become just a normal person. And it takes time for one to stabilize, heal, and gain that kind of mastery, and to make the consistent choices that will keep leading them down the path toward their potential. They need to be mentored through a period of time that will be this critical piece to the whole rest of their life being able to be what they want it to be. Whether it's getting started in recovery, or getting started again, or coming out from rehab, the first year post-rehab, or the first year of trying to recover is so key, and the first few months is critical. And none of it has to happen by going to rehab or going to a bunch of meetings, because with the right mentoring program and approach, it can be a daily part of their lives, steadily building them towards a time where mentoring isn't needed anymore, and the person essentially has become their own coach that just needs to keep choosing and reinforcing the things they've gotten used to. In our programs, people essentially learn the instruction manual to themselves, how they work, what they need, and how to access that, and how to bring the best of themselves forward. And for families, they should keep in mind that this is a chronic, deadly disease, and that you should not mess around with trying to wing it with your best guesses or with band-aids. This illness doesn't need a bunch of family therapy sessions. It needs family members who all understand the same concepts and can align together to help their loved one and themselves as a result remove addiction from their life. Because everyone that I know that uses the right strategies and principles succeeds. If a person with addiction is the only one that really knows this process, then the issues that plague them can keep them from doing it as well as they would if they had at least one person in their family aware of what their right recovery formula is and engaging in that for their loved one's best interest and their own. A mentor that everyone can learn the same things from together is key, and a program that everyone can learn on their own in the convenience of their own time is a strategy of working together that we found people are actually willing to do. So today, folks, I promised how you could reclaim your life and drop that I'm an addict baggage. The real reasons why addiction recovery rarely works. Why admitting to addiction and doing something about it doesn't have to be daunting. How to approach addiction so you can fully recover and begin to live your full potential. The importance of critical evaluations. The hidden obstacles responsible for the relapse roller coaster and the rehab revolving door. And how to avoid the insanity of recovery tactics you don't want to do. Also, a powerful mechanism that can eradicate addiction. And what to do to support yourself or someone you love effectively without straining or enabling. Also, how to relapse-proof your recovery so you can remove addiction from your life quickly, conveniently, and completely. And an essential component missing from most recovery strategies. And also, how families can conquer addiction together without having to go to family therapy or 12-step meetings. And mostly, folks, today I promised a life-changing set of shifts and strategies to remove addiction from your life completely. So remember what you need to win. Rethink your recovery strategy, redefine your addiction philosophy, get essential evaluations, use the secret weapon, operate with integrity, invest in mentoring, because these 6 shifts are enough to fully recover your life from addiction and into a life of freedom and full potential. Now you have a choice. You can either take the info I've given you and you can forget all about it. You can keep on struggling and doing what you're doing, or if you want to have the life you know you deserve and you want to start getting that now, then here's what I have for you. Here's how I can help. My team and I have set aside time in the next week to speak to you personally about how you can apply these ideas to remove addiction from your life or the life of someone you love starting today. Whatever your biggest challenges are, we've seen it all and we know how to overcome it. On the call, we'll work with you to craft a step-by-step game plan to achieve all your addiction recovery goals, whether for you or for a loved one. And no matter how difficult the addiction or the circumstances, we'll help you get total clarity about exactly what your goals are and the exact steps you should take to achieve them. And the cost of this, folks, is absolutely free. But here's the catch. This is not for everyone. Here's who this is for. You must be absolutely committed to removing addiction from your life and being the best version of yourself possible. You must also have grit and determination. This is not some temporary band-aid to the problem that doesn't work. This is a complete roadmap and blueprint to full recovery and realizing your goals right now. Why are we doing this? Well, because we've seen a lot of unnecessary suffering and we are passionate about helping people live their full potential. We feel that without our help, people will likely continue to struggle with the root causes of addiction and they will never experience actual recovery from addiction. And their life will be perpetually at risk of relapse and they'll be afraid that they're going to lose everything that matters to them most. And they're never going to be able to live their full potential. And we just can't have that. We feel so passionate about what we do. And plus, we know you might want our help transforming addiction into full recovery. If so, we can discuss it. And if it's a good fit for both of us, great. If not, that is fine too. And if we work together, we'll put you through the same programs we put our clients and their family members through. This curriculum is designed to overcome addiction quickly, efficiently, and conveniently, and to recover one's health and potential completely. And we'll expect you to have a significant increase in recovery, an elevation in well-being, and a greater depth of mastery and empowerment within just 1 to 2 weeks. So if you want to book a call with us, go to the link on the screen and apply now. Spaces are limited, so sign up now. And everyone, I'm going to try to make a little button appear where you can click that button and sign up as well. But if not, just take the link on the screen and cut and paste it, and that will bring you to our calendar page, and you'll see all the available appointment times, and just grab one that works for you. So after that, you'll be taken to a short application page. Just fill it in really quickly, and we'll get on the call with you at the appointment time that you picked. I know it's been a really hard road to recovery, folks, and I know it's overwhelming to deal with all of this, but I promise you that this is going to be the best hour you've ever spent removing addiction from your life. So folks, thank you for participating today. And I'm just so glad I was able to be with everyone. And it's just been great to be with you and share all of this with you. I really appreciate the participation. And for any of you that are part of our Facebook group called Addiction Recovery Mastery, thank you for all of that support and participation as well. And I know, we're essentially over time, folks. So I just wanted to share one more thing with you, but if you need to go, then that's fine. This is just one more success story that I wanted to share because it's a family success story that happened with one of our clients named Julia. And Julia was somebody that had literally the worst addiction I had ever seen in my life to alcohol, and one of the worst addictions, one of the worst eating disorders and addiction to food I've ever seen as well. Her life was in shambles and constant crisis, even though she tried to keep it together because she was a CEO of an engineering company. She is one of the smartest people and one of the top people in her field, literally in the world. And she had a lot of resilience, but she had to keep going in and out of rehab, restarting things only to just completely relapse hardcore when she would be on her own for a few months. And she would do damage to everything. DUIs, falling down in the bathroom, ending up in the hospital. Her family was devastated and felt powerless and hopeless and so worried about her. And the reality is that with this process, even though Julia was in her late 40s at this point, we absolutely were able to have a success story for her and for her whole family. And her mother wrote this, and it's something that's dear to my heart because she sends a Christmas card every year expressing things like this to me. And she says, "There aren't enough words to express the appreciation I have of Dr. T for literally saving my daughter Julia's life, and in the process saving mine. Dr. T guided her to make a full recovery out of a 15-year spin cycle into a healthy and prosperous life that wasn't thought possible given how far gone she was. Julia's life is now better than we ever imagined. I know that she will never go back there, and I will never again be waiting for the next relapse or worse to be reported to me. People told me to give up praying for a miracle, but that's exactly what Dr. T does, no matter how bad things might seem. We are eternally grateful for getting our lives back and wish all of Team Dr. T continued success with their purpose, as they certainly have the right recovery formula." And it's signed Darlene, Julia's mom. Thank you, everyone.